Lesson 50. In Greek, word order is flexible. So in this lesson, we're talking about word order. That is, the order in which we put words in a sentence when we want to build a sentence. And so as English speakers, we have a certain order of words that seems normal to us, that seems like the, correct word order. But not every language needs that same word order that we use in English. Word order can vary from language to language, right, Catherine?
Right. And in English, we are a very word order dependent language. And so man bites dog and dog bites man are two very different sentences with two very different meanings. And you can't have the words in a different order while still saying the same thing, because English is what we call a word order heavy or word order dependent language in order to communicate meaning. But some languages are not.
In many languages, the different words in the sentence have special markers, like little tag endings that show you what that particular word is doing in the sentence.
Right.
And the word you hear to describe that is the word inflected. If a language is an inflected language, often what that means is that, well, especially nouns have special forms or special endings. In German, special articles. And those endings or articles or forms show what a noun is doing in a sentence, or at least they give you a big clue. And in English, we don't have that very much. So we depend on word order to generate meaning a lot more in English than in other languages.
Yeah, and because we don't have separate endings, we have to depend on word order. But when you have endings that will communicate meaning, then you don't have to depend on word order. And so words can be put in not necessarily any order. Not all rules go out the window, but there's a lot more flexibility with where a word can go in a sentence relative to the other words, which is really fun when you get into the more advanced things and you get into poetry where you can start making word pictures with the words.
Yeah, that's like if you have a battle and someone captures the city, you could have the words for city between the words for soldiers. And so it's like the word is trapped. Is that what you mean? Like,
so, or you talk
word
about
painting or
people, people being inside of a dark cave and you put the word dark and the word cave on either side of the words for the people who are in the cave.
Nice. So the big takeaway for this lesson is that word order in English is much less flexible than in other languages. And in ancient Greek, word order is much more flexible. And so that's a thing that beginners need to get used to. They have to get accustomed to the fact that the word order in an ancient Greek sentence isn't going to be what they would expect it to be in a corresponding English sentence. And so we have a very simple example here in this lesson. We have eimi georgos, literally, I am a farmer, and then georgosemi, literally, a farmer I am.
And in English, that makes us all sound like Yoda.
Right. Learn Greek, you will. Now, Catherine, let's say you're reading a poem, and the poem says, a farmer I am. That's perfectly understandable to an English speaker. We don't misunderstand that in any way. We know that it's simply saying, I am a farmer, but we wouldn't really use that same word order in just a normal conversation. It might have more of an artistic or poetic kind of sound to it if you hear it.
Yeah, it sounds more old-fashioned or archaic and doesn't sound like normal English.
Right. So it's perfectly understandable, but not exactly the way we would talk. But in ancient Greek, you can do that all the time, and it sounds totally normal. There is no, strong expectation that all your words will be in a certain order.
Exactly.
There are certain conventions, certain things that are considered normal in Greek, but the basic order of the words in a sentence is very flexible.
Yes.
So for our readers and listeners, the big thing for this lesson is they have to get accustomed to the fact that the words can be in an order that they're not used to. So they have to get accustomed to viewing the sentence kind of as a sort of as a composite. I would think of it as they have to view the sentence in larger groups, larger sense units. Like take several words in at a time and see the composite meaning of those words as a group rather than going one word at a time.
It's actually something that, as advocates for speaking ancient Greek, is very familiar to you and I, because that's how we talk in English. We don't take it word by word by word by word and go, okay, you just said I, and then you said am, and then you said and then you said farmer. We take the whole chunk at once and then understand that sentence as a unit of meaning. Similarly, as our listeners get more comfortable with the Greek language, that's how we're hoping that they will be able to process Greek as well. This word order bit is just part of that learning process.
And as I think about word order, I start to think about situations in which a Greek writer might want to change around the word order. And one thing that Greek teachers and Greek textbooks will tell you is that oftentimes if a writer wants to emphasize a word, that particular writer will put that word more toward the front of the sentence.
Mm-hmm. Often.
And they say that in Latin too. So you're front-loading the sentence with the thing that you might want to emphasize.
Right.
So if I say, I am a farmer, I might not really want to be emphasizing anything. But if I'm an ancient Greek writer and I say, a farmer I am, then that might mean that I want to emphasize the idea of being the farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear in my pronunciation how I said that word a bit louder. A farmer I am. Of course, in spoken language, we can use sound to emphasize various words. The intonation of the voice, volume, timing. But in a written format, you can't do that. So word order becomes an important way to emphasize something that you've preserved in the form of a written text.
Yes. So it's a way to kind of get around the universal complaint about text and email, which is that certain emotions just don't come through very well.
Unless you have emojis to go along with it.
But in Greek, we don't have emoji.
No emojis in ancient Greek? Oh, no.
Oh, no.
But we have word order.
Yes.
And it occurs to me, Catherine, that in English, I don't know if you do this, but I vary my word order sometimes depending on what I remember to say at what time.
Mm-hmm.
And in casual conversation, I think people really do change word order up more than we might think. Like, for instance, if I'm thinking about, let's say I go to the coffee shop and I see my friend and we talk about cats. There's three things there. There's my friend, there's cats, there's the coffee shop. I may tell someone about that in any order.
Mm-hmm. I
might say, hey, my friend, I saw him the other day at Starbucks.
Right.
See what I did there? I talked about my friend first because that's what came to mind first.
Yes. And in spoken language, like you said, we do that more. And there's no running grammar check to put blue underlines under the fact that the direct object of that sentence went first. My friend, I saw. Because that's totally normal in spoken conversation. It's just a little harder when you're reading to understand because we don't have that intonation, that vocal change. We don't have the expectation that this is informal speech. And so there's no real reason to worry about word order as much.
Right. So I guess what I was just talking about just now was more about thought order, not so much word order, because I still kept a normal word order. I didn't say, friend my coffee shop saw. I didn't make it into a strange word order, but I just presented the thoughts kind of as they came into my mind. But I think in ancient Greek, you can do that with words. You can just rearrange the words into such a way that sort of sculpts the language and molds the sentence into, a certain shape that you want it to be in as a writer.
Yes, and particularly within those smaller units within a sentence that are thought units, so the clauses, the thought units within the sentence, you can definitely do that a lot more within those thought units.
So the big takeaway here is that in ancient Greek, word order is much more flexible than in English. So we have to get accustomed to not seeing the words in the same order we would expect. Eimi georgos and georgos eimi really are not all that different. We just have to get accustomed to seeing both of those and just seeing the Greek words in all kinds of different orders.
Right.
Catherine, why don't we look at these exercises? Number one, eimi, of course, means I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2 and 3, we have eimi georgos, and then we have it switched, georgos eimi. They both mean I am a farmer. Possibly in number 3, whoever wrote it perhaps wants to emphasize the word farmer and therefore puts it first. We don't really know.
We would need more context to know exactly what's going on.
4 and 5 are also similar, but with one important difference.
So number 4, eimi didaskalos, and number 5, ho didaskalos eimi. Their main difference is the article that's in number 5, ho. So number 4 is I am a teacher, but number 5 is I am the teacher. And in both cases, the word order is not the main thing that determines the difference between the two sentences. It's the fact that there's an article, ho, in number 5, and there is not an article in number 4. The word order has not affected the meaning, but the extra article has.
Exactly, because as we told them, if there is no article in front of a noun, you can just throw in a or an,
Mm-hmm.
what we call the indefinite article.
Right.
In number 6, I am the farmer, ho georgos. The article ho plus georgos says the farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we have the article in number 7, I am the teacher. And then finally, we have people saying who they are. I am Telemachus, I am Cadmus, I am Alexander. And again, the word order is changed up to help you get accustomed to the fact that the word order is going to be much more flexible in Greek.
Right. And that does not mean that the word order in the English translation has to mimic the word order in the Greek exactly. It just needs to be translated into what makes sense in English.
That's a great point. In the answer key, we're not under any obligation to put the words in the same order as they were in the Greek sentence. We're going to rearrange them into the smooth-sounding English translation.